the work dynamic like at Invest to decide the rating?
Well, our process is interactive, and it's very important for us to have the interactive discussion with companies and understand the management philosophy and what they're trying to do with the company. But then we do have a methodology that we follow. We look at balance sheet strength, the operating performance, which protects the balance sheet strength. We look at business profile and your position in the marketplace, so we understand how you withstand competition in the marketplace. And then finally, we look at enterprise risk management to understand how you manage your risks and look forward and what possibly could happen. And along with that, we also give credit for members of groups, and if there's support from a parent or something of that nature, there'll be a rating lift there. But the most important piece to the whole thing is the interaction with a company and the process and how we go by talking to them.
In the field of solvency, what difference would you highlight between the European, North American, and Latin American markets?
Well, all of them are a little bit different, and in some cases, you have just a matter of maturity of the regulation that's out there. The European markets are very mature. The U.S. market mature. Both of those are different. They're regulated in different approaches by the regulators. They look at it from one way to another. And then in the Latin American market, it varies within each of the countries. Some stronger. Mexico, for instance, instituted a form of Solvency II to regulate their companies and what their expectations are. Other countries in the region are still maturing and developing their regulations, so a little bit behind where they are in the developed markets in Europe and the US, but still strong. And I think our rating process is focused on being part of the overall system, working with regulators and looking at similar things, but not doing the same thing a regulator is doing.
How are the services offered by rating agencies in Latin America developing, and what rating does this market offer?
Well, a couple of things. We've instituted this year a national scale rating in some regions, and we do it in Mexico already. We're looking at other countries in Latin America where we would develop that process for Latin American countries, whereby that rating just looks at how you stand within the country, not on a global basis. One of the other things we're doing is looking at a performance assessment that will help to look at MGAs and how the business is developed, because that adds risk to the companies if they are working with MGAs and how much control they hand over. But overall, I think the ratings in general are utilized to move from country to country and to demonstrate that strength when you're moving outside of your marketplace very often.
What role do capital markets play?
They're a critical role. Without the capital markets, you don't have the support of the companies that are there for the most part. I mean, you have mutuals that are supported by policyholders, but most of the new business and new companies that are created come out of the capital markets. For instance, over the last year, it's been very tight in terms of the amount of capital that's been brought into the marketplace. So the capital markets will drive how much competition is in the market and the capacity in the market, which will change rates too. If there's a lot of capacity in the markets, that can result in rates being lower as companies look to put that capital to use.
How did the COVID-19 pandemic influence the risk rating?
Obviously, there were some losses in there. There were a lot of claims that were put forward, but for the most part, many of the policies didn't cover the pandemic type of aspect. So the losses to the insurance industry on the property casualty side were not as high as originally thought to be. On the health side, it actually in many cases helped to lower the cost of health coverage because less people were having procedures done. So there was less utilization of the system because people didn't want to be in a hospital at that point in time. So it had an impact there, but I wouldn't say it was a negative impact overall on the insurance industry.
How does the sovereign risk of a country influence the rating of the insurance market?
For us, it's different by rating agency. We don't do sovereign ratings. We don't look at it from a sovereign risk aspect. We don't think of it in terms of if the country has a high level of risk, then every company in that country must as well. We look at it from the overall risk of the rule of law, the political standards, and the consistency of the rule of law, and consistency of the political environment that's there. If that's solid, and then we look at how the company manages the overall risk, the economic risk. What are the capital markets and their ability to invest their risk? If a company can manage through that, they could be higher than the sovereign risk. Other rating agencies have a kind of a cap where they will only rate up to that sovereign rating level, and that's the highest any company can get. So we're a little different in that regard.
And the last, what is your general view of the economic situation in Latin America?
Well, it's obviously it's more volatile than we see around the globe, but for the most part, there's a lot of opportunity in the marketplace, a real chance for innovation and bringing solutions to the marketplace. And I think you're seeing companies that are operating in the marketplace and coming into the marketplace are looking at it from that perspective of how can they solve issues that are in the market. Economically, the level of inflation in some countries creates a challenge. And trying to price your business and make sure you're getting the right price, because the way insurance works, you charge the price now, you know what your costs are a year down the road when claims come in. So it's a little difficult when you don't know a certainty of where the inflation rate is. It always is a challenge. I think that one of the other things is typically earthquake in some of the regions is a concern. There hasn't been any major insurance losses from that recently, but it's always out there. You never know when it's going to be. So it's a challenge for companies to manage.